Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast, where it's all about turning your job search into a slam dunk. Your host is Angela Copeland.
Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Copeland. Today, I'm at Indeed Interactive in Austin, Texas, and with me, I have Paul Darcy. Paul is the Senior Vice President of Marketing at Indeed.com. He oversees worldwide marketing, alliances, and business development for Indeed. Paul, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Angela, for having me.
Well, it's so exciting to be here. I'm just really excited to talk to you. You were actually quoted recently in Business Insider talking about the job search process and how it's still flawed after all this time. And I'm going to quote you. You actually said, "It's impossible not to notice the name and the person's background, the address, and what part of the city they live in, whether or not they recognize the brand names of previous employers and schools. And it turns out that all these things, more than anything else, determines whether or not someone's given the opportunity for an interview." So I'm curious, if we are job seeking as a candidate, what can we do to be considered for a job despite all these biases?
There are a ridiculous number of biases in the hiring processes, even of the best organizations. And part of it is it's just the way the brain works. You know, we jump to quick associations and shortcuts that probably don't serve us particularly well. The average time spent reviewing a resume is 6 seconds. And while resumes are incredibly imperfect vehicles for showcasing our skills and abilities, they really are, at this point, still a necessary evil. Someday they will hopefully die, but that day is unfortunately not today. I think my advice to job seekers is a few things. One, view your resume as that 6-second vehicle and, show it to someone and ask, what are the few things that pop out, and make sure those things are super impactful. You really just get a chance to deliver a couple of messages or ideas, and using your resume to do that really well, I think, is a critical part of the process. For us at Indeed, we are trying to do everything we can to help people shine beyond what's in their resumes. And one of the big areas of focus for us is assessments. And a lot of organizations now, of all types, for all sorts of different roles, are putting assessments in place. They give people a chance to really showcase what they can do in a way where the biasing information of race or gender or family background or whatever it might be doesn't get a chance to show.
That makes a lot of sense. When it comes to companies and their interview processes, honestly, one of my favorite kinds of assessments is when they ask you to do a presentation.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a lot of job seekers who say, gosh, that's a lot of work. But very often, that type of assessment in particular, when you get a chance to put out here, this is how I would do my job, and the company is buying into you, to me at least, it feels much more fair, and then they actually like your work.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in that process of being interviewed, the thing that you want most is just to be seen as a person and to be given that chance to show how you can contribute. So many interviews are just random questions that quick second response is not necessarily indicative of who we are or what we can really contribute to the organization. So I know I'm really appreciative when I see companies that give someone a real opportunity to demonstrate what they can do and have that moment they can plan to really wow the interviewers. That is a great way to let people show who they are.
Mm-hmm. And I also think you make a good point with the 6-second resume, because so often I see resumes that are like 3 pages long, and there's something really great on like the bottom of the 3rd page. And I say to job seekers, think of it like a Google search. Somebody is not going to read your whole resume in that 6-second period. It better be at the top. It better stand out.
Yeah, and I think it's it's partly that people look at a resume in 6 seconds, but it's also that they look at resume after resume after resume after resume. I see a lot of resumes where on the top there is some statement of purpose, and I love that. But it's often a paragraph and a lot of vague words that sound just like everyone else's paragraph.
Right.
How do you use that sentence to get someone's attention? And then how do you focus people on the work and the impact in a way that stops, the rote passing through of the words on your page and gets them to stop and think for a second? If you can do that, it's really impactful on standing out.
You're right. I mean, job seeking is marketing. It's marketing yourself.
Yeah, job seeking is marketing. There's no doubt about that.
Well, so this has been the most exciting year. For forever, it's been a company's market. This is finally, we're in a job seekers market, which is such an exciting time. It really kind of shifts things. So companies are now really working to stand out to job seekers.
Yeah.
And I know Indeed is helping in that process. What do you see that companies are doing to really stand out to job seekers?
There's no doubt that we're in an unusual economic situation where unemployment is incredibly low and where there's more available jobs than there are unemployed people looking for opportunities. But that said, I'm really cognizant that the experience of your listeners and people around the country is really different depending on where you are and what you do. If you're coming from manufacturing in the Midwest, it still may not feel that great. And while there's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of people who feel unemployed, or that there aren't great jobs, or that there aren't the jobs that pay what they'd like to pay. And so for all of us, we're lucky if it feels like a job seeker's market. But in so many cases, the power is so on the employer side that it typically feels, for a lot of people, like it goes the other way. For employers, there's a lot that they're doing now that it is harder to find talent, especially in a set of big cities that have become highly competitive for the most highly sought after talent. Places like Austin, where we are today, or Denver, or Seattle, or San Francisco, or Portland, or New York. And in those places, we see people getting more creative and doing a lot of different things to people and bring people in the door. But I think my advice to companies is something a lot more simple. When most people look for a job, they start by looking for the type of work and the location that's important to them. Only 1 in 5 job seekers starts with a list of companies and goes there first. And so my advice to companies is to start by making sure your job descriptions are really great. For most people, that's the first thing they see. And if there's anything that's worse than a resume, it's probably a job description. Most of them are boring, bureaucratic documents that suck all interest most people have about the potential opportunity. They really make work feel like the worst side of work. The best companies use those job seekers to inspire people and to get their attention in the same way that you want to with a resume if you're a job seeker. And so while there are companies that are doing splashy things to get more people in the door, I think the smartest companies are finding the truth that's within their organization and really communicating it in a powerful way to draw people in who will be the right fit for their organization, because that's best for them and that's certainly best for job seekers.
You make a point. I was not expecting that to be your answer, but that is the perfect answer, because I talk to job seekers every day who see job descriptions that are like 3 or 4 pages long. And I'll say, you should apply for this job. You'd be so great at it. And they say, either I don't understand what the job is, or very, very often they'll say, I'm not qualified for that job.
Yeah.
They're asking for 20 things and I only have 15 of those things.
And what the research says is that long job descriptions with long list of requirements result in a highly biased job pool. That what research shows is that men, when they see that long list, will still apply to the job. But women will only apply, or are only likely to apply, if they meet all of the requirements. And so while it's unintentional, a lot of organizations wind up discouraging people who they really want in their organization by creating job descriptions that are really bad.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I also really appreciate that you mentioned how regional the job seekers market is. You know, I hear from job seekers all the time that say, Angela, I saw on the news that it's a good market, but I haven't gotten a job, so I must be doing something really wrong. And I say, no, like especially where I live in Memphis, it's not a great market in every sector. And sometimes I have to say, listen, these numbers you're seeing on TV, they're for the country as a whole. They maybe don't apply in your local market. So you do really have to look at how things are going locally.
Today is a tale of two economies in the United States. It's bifurcated. And while the metrics look good in the aggregate, the experience is really different depending on where you live, what sort of work you do, what your education is, and that makes the news not really representative of a lot of the world. In particular, if you're in rural America, it's really different than a few hot cities that get a lot of attention.
That's absolutely right. It's absolutely right. Well, as we talk about candidates, you're right in the middle of the whole job search process, and I'm curious, what do you think it is that candidates in particular are looking for, and what's important to the candidate?
So I think most job seekers just want opportunity. I mean, people work, partly for identity and passion, but really to earn money to pay their family and to be able to support themselves and live their life. When people are looking for a job, it's one of the most important decisions that they will make, no matter how long that job is going to be for. After family and health, for most people, career is the next most important thing. And for those of us who work full-time, we typically spend more time with our work colleagues than with our family. So those things are all really, really important. Job seekers start their search really with practical things. Where the job is located is incredibly important because people don't want to waste their time commuting. Here in Austin, we got a lot of traffic now, and picking a job close to home is something that matters. You want to make sure that it has the right benefits, that you're paid, paid fairly, and that's appealing. So all of those things are pieces to the equation. I think for those that are lucky to have some choice in where they work, they can move up that hierarchy of needs. And then the next set of things is to work with people who you admire or want to work with, to do work that has purpose and an impact in the world, and to be part of a community that feels like a community where you share values and where you want to be around the people you're working with on a day-to-day basis. But for a lot of people, it starts with, what's going to pay the bills, and do that without me having to drive so far that I don't get to see my family.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that you mentioned a number of different factors. I think sometimes employers assume that it's just about one thing, like money, for example. But a lot of times when people leave jobs, and I hear from job seekers, it's because there's one of those other pieces that's missing, actually. Yeah. And you also mentioned being paid fairly. So you didn't mention being paid the most. I think a lot of people feeling like they're being treated equitably at work is really important.
Yeah, I think that's right. The advice that I give to employers about how they tell their story as an employer, I think first of all that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that most people don't really understand what a career would be if they haven't done it, and certainly what working at a particular company is right. The world would be better if companies were able to really clearly and accurately communicate what's special about their organization and who it's the right fit for. But they don't do that well. There's this whole world of employer brand, but it tends to be, in a lot of organizations, fluff. And the advice I give organizations is to find that truth, something that your employees believe is true and special and what keeps them there day after day. Something that, if you do it right, is what appears on your career page, but also in the reviews that are written on Indeed or Glassdoor. And so that is, I think, the heart of it. The one question I ask employers to think about is I ask them to answer this question for the people who are looking for jobs. You would be proud to work for us because of blank. And figuring out that blank is the most useful thing you can do to help job seekers see if this is the right company for them and their family and their life.
You're absolutely right. I saw a statistic last year, and I don't remember the number, but it talked about the fact that the more well-informed the candidate is on the way in, the more likely they are to stay in the job.
Yeah.
Like, they'll stay there longer. And what I hear from what you're saying is really communicate what the company's about, who would want to come and work here, like what it is that we offer, so that it's a match on the way in the door, rather than you have to get the job to figure out if it's a match.
And I must say, reviews are great. We have a lot of employer reviews on Indeed, I think more than any other site at this point in time. And right now, 2/3 of job seekers go first to reviews when they're looking for a job. Those reviews are helpful. When you read after review, you really do figure out what it's like to be at that place. And job seekers are smart. They don't expect every review to be great or perfect. When they do, they probably get suspicious of the organization. But they want to know what they're getting into and what this contract is really going to be. There's a lot of imbalance of power and information in looking for a job. Employers have the power. And reviews have been really a great enabler at kind of equalizing that. And smart employers are realizing that they want the things they talk about when they create an employer brand in their job descriptions on their career pages to really match with the things that their own employees are writing in the reviews.
You make such a good point. I can't even tell you how many job seekers have said to me, Angela, I really am interested in this company, but man, their reviews are terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure about this company. And in the reverse, a few years ago, a CEO of a company called me and said, Angela, we have terrible company reviews. What can I do to take this down or get this changed? And I said, you can't. That's the thing. You've got to work on your culture so that your own employees will leave you better reviews.
Yeah, I mean, that is often the response is, our reviews are terrible. How do we hide these from the world? But really, the best solution is to figure out how to address those problems and to fix those problems. One of the things about reviews is that there are really well-reviewed companies in every industry and every academic category, every industrial category. There are, low-margin grocery chains that have mostly lower to mid-wage workers that have phenomenal reviews. Having a great culture and valuing your employees is a choice. It's not just about being the highest paid or knowledge worker jobs or some set of the population that you're serving with employees. It's something that any organization can do for any worker population. But it takes courage and it takes leadership, and partly because of reviews, there's accountability, and some more organizations are making that choice. But in a lot of the world, there's still a long way to go.
You're right. It is a choice. And the thing that you mentioned that I think is very important for listeners to note is that these reviews cannot be edited or changed by the company. So what you see is really, those are the real reviews.
Those are the real reviews.
That's right. Well, so you head up marketing here at Indeed, and I talk with job seekers every day who want to switch from another field into marketing. And I'm sure you probably see this too. What advice do you have for us if we are interested to switch into marketing from some other area?
So marketing, I think, first of all, means so many different things to so many people and so many organizations. As someone who's run marketing in a lot of different companies, it really seems like a completely different job with different teams doing different things in different places. And so I think when we think about marketing, the starting point is, what part of marketing do you want to be in? Do you want to be creating content or advertising or doing design? Do you want to be doing partnerships and alliances? Do you want to be doing communications or internal communications? Do you want to be doing social impact marketing work that's maybe more engaged with the community? Do you want to be doing search engine optimization or digital marketing or something that's real technical and algorithmic? For me, there's a set of skills that marketers have or that I look for first that helps me figure out where someone could fit or what might be right. For everyone we hire, I think first we look for passion for our mission and for purpose. That's important. But the specific skills, I think, are the following. Being able to write and write well is really critical for a lot of jobs. Fluency with data and analysis is key. People think a lot of marketing first as a creative function, but really first it's an analytical function. It's being able to measure the impact of messages, of stories, of creative work to make sure that it's being received right in the world and you're pointing your organization in the right direction. Creative skills are incredibly important, and we have someone who has those. There's a lot of places we can put those people. Those creative skills could be everything from, brilliant ideas and being very innovative to just, beautiful representation of the world or products or whatever it might be through design. And then we have a lot of people on our teams that have very technical skills, people who can code. And if I were going to say, if there was one thing someone said they should learn to get into marketing, I would say learn, how to code in Python. It's not a tough language. You can go online and take a course and learn that. But I tell you, someone who can write, who can communicate, and has a little bit of skills of how to work with data and do a little bit of coding, that's someone who's going to be attractive to a lot of marketing organizations.
You make some really good points. I especially like the one about data and being able to analyze data. I started my own career in engineering before I switched to marketing, and I found it to be really incredibly helpful in a way that I probably would never have guessed.
Yeah, and on my team, I have people who went to art school, but I also have people with a doctorate in economics or a doctorate in theoretical physics. And there's as much work in our organization on how we create beautiful TV ads as how we're doing algorithm development for digital marketing. And so that's the nature of a modern marketing organization.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, for example, with Python, something like that you can go online and you can learn. I think maybe another resource might even be sometimes volunteering your skills somewhere to learn new things. Yeah,
absolutely. And getting that experience is great. I've certainly seen people who may be early in their career who started in a different career, but who've dug in and volunteered for a not-for-profit, building their CRM system or helping with marketing or doing data and analysis. There's a lot of ways to get that initial experience, to try to open that door.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things about marketers, especially in a field like, for example, with digital marketing, is you need to be someone who's a self-starter. You can't expect to be taught every little thing. Marketing changes all the time, so you need to be someone who is willing to go out on the internet or who's willing to go volunteer. You can't just be sort of sitting around waiting for someone to feed you the answers. But
that's actually one of my biggest pieces of advice to people on my marketing team and to marketers that I talk to. The level broadly of knowledge in organizations, the understanding of the world of marketing, how advertising works, the platforms that are available and how they're evolving, it's so narrow and shallow, and it's amazing to me how little work it takes to know more than everyone else. Personally, I spend time, going online and reading academic research papers on brand, on marketing, on identity, on how the brain works, which is really important to understanding marketing. And I learned so much from that, and I'm always amazed by how much impact people can have on my team when they're doing the same thing, and they're bringing ideas or research or data that none of us have thought of. Because together, even in a pretty good-sized team, we're only scratching a tiny bit of the surface of the world's knowledge of what great marketing can do to help build a great company and a great brand.
That's right. Well, I mentioned, we talked for a second about nonprofits, and you are announcing a really exciting partnership here at Indeed Interactive with Goodwill. And I'm wondering, can you share a little bit with us about that?
Yeah. So for us at Indeed, we are incredibly mission driven. From the beginning, we've been focused on one thing, and that is helping people get jobs. Well, we have focused most of our history on doing that through our products. We know that there are so many potential partners in the world who share our values and that mission, and who, by working with them, we can work together to reach more job seekers and help them find the career that's right for them. There's no one that does that better than Goodwill. And so we've partnered with Goodwill to help 1 million people find jobs they wouldn't otherwise get, working together with their resources and their people and our technology in partnership to help try to have a real impact on the job seekers that really need all of our help the most.
That's excellent. I'm always so impressed with the work that Indeed is doing outside of Indeed. Well, normally I ask my guests, where's a good place to learn more about your work? Should we go to Indeed? Where can we learn more about your work?
There's so many places. So you can, of course, go to Indeed. And I think there's 2 places on Indeed that are really interesting to look at. The Indeed blog is just full of research and ideas and the things that we see. And it's really focused on job seekers and helping, give them the advice and the tips, as well as employers to help them hire better. So I always recommend the Indeed blog. And then also, I'm really proud of the work our team of Indeed economists has done. And if you go to hiringlab.org, you can find all of the research on what's happening now in the economy, some of the structural things we talk about where opportunity is and where it's still really tough. And so that's another great resource for people out there as they're thinking about the world of work that they're seeing around them.
Oh, thank you. I totally agree. I just had Martha Gimbel on my show recently.
Oh, awesome.
I love the work that they're doing. It's just wonderful. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been great.
Thank you, Angela. I really appreciate being part of it.
And thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the episode today, please don't forget to help me out. Go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe to the show. The more subscribers we have, the easier it is for other people to find the show.
Thank you for listening to the Copeland Coaching Podcast today with your host, Angela Copeland. Tune in next time to get more great tips on turning your job search into a slam dunk.